guys, DM here with Lifestyle Leaps. I'm super excited to show you an interview today with author of the book called 30 Day Stay. Her name is Zeona McIntyre, and co-author Sarah Weaver is not here with us today, but you are gonna get all the juicy details about this book, this strategy, and how it's gonna impact our rental ability in the year 2023. So if you're ready, hold on to your seats and let's go. Welcome back to Lifestyle Leaps, you guys. My name is DM. On this channel, we talk about how you're going to achieve financial freedom and retire early, and oftentimes that includes talking about real estate investing. Now, when it comes to real estate investing, we talk about long-term, short-term, and midterm rentals. They're all very key players in our portfolio. Today, in particular, we are going to be talking about midterm rentals, and the reason why that is so important, especially in the upcoming economy and market, is that you're going to find a lot of cities tighten their regulations on short-term rentals. You're also going to find a lot of owners and hosts who are just getting exhausted by all of the changes, who are heavily impacted by COVID when we had to do the shutdown and all the loss of income that was involved. That was the beginning boom of the midterm rentals. This concept has already existed, but you will find that in this upcoming year, it is going to be blowing up. You will see it all over YouTube, and here we have an author who has written a book called 30 Day Stay. She's ahead of the curve. She's gonna go over the concept of the book, who it's best used for. We're gonna talk a little bit about behind the scenes, but I highly encourage you get this book because I think that it is really the A to Z of midterm rental investing, but it just is not finite to that. It is infinitely amazing because it has concepts for just real estate investing in general, comparing it to short-term rentals, looking at everything that you need to look at and consider. Even me as a more seasoned investor, I was like, wow, these are some factors and tips and tricks that I didn't even think about, and I'm gonna point them in this interview here today. So let's get right into it. All right, you guys. So I actually started following Zeona McIntyre probably 5 years ago when she first appeared on the Bigger Pockets podcast. And I had a little lady crush on her because there's not that many women who come on the podcast, let alone someone who I can totally identify with, you know, a female real estate investor, young, hip, all of that, right? So I would love to give her a warm welcome. Welcome, Zeona.
Thank you. I love hearing about crushes.
It's been amazing watching you over the past few years, and I really want to give the Lifestyle Leap viewers an idea of your background. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
So I started in 2012 just doing short-term rentals. I started with arbitrage, which is something that a lot of people have taken a lot further, but I did that for a couple of years until I hit financial independence and decided I wanted to actually buy properties. And so the cool thing about real estate is that you can supercharge your way to financial freedom. And I was able to do that in just 2 years, from being in student loan debt, making almost minimum wage, and then it totally changed my life. And then from there, I started co-hosting because that allowed me to scale without having money to buy a lot of places. So I ended up co-hosting over 60 units in 5 countries. So I'm really big on automation, you know, managing out of state, owning out of state, if that's what you can afford. And then now I sell real estate to investors that are wanting to get into owning property. And I have 12 units of my own in 4 states. And my favorite thing that we're doing now is the medium-term rental strategy. So, you know, got to change with the times, keeping it fresh.
Yeah, definitely. Well, so then tell me how you ended up writing a book about 30 Day Stay.
I did the real transition during COVID. So I had some accidental longer stays through just doing short-term rentals, but it just didn't really connect. I didn't realize like, oh, wow, this is so much easier. You can still make the same amount of money. And like, there's so much demand in that space. I didn't see that until COVID, and it sort of forced me into it. And I was glad because at that point I was a little bit burnt out on the STR space. And I was like, man, I don't know if I love this anymore. And it's hard to like push that idea out and teach people about it when you're not feeling the fire. It was that day that it seemed fine. Everything was great. Then the very next day, like 2 months of bookings canceled just overnight. And so I had to pivot. And I'm so glad that I did, but I just started taking on these longer bookings.
Yes, and as I mentioned before, I have been following you since the Bigger Pockets podcast and watching your success journey. So can you share with us how you ended up going from being on the podcast to now authoring a book at their publishing company?
Bigger Pockets is like a little family, so I think I've just kind of stayed in the fold with them. I have a lot of friends that are in the Bigger Pockets like family, and I live in Colorado, so they're in Denver. And so I've sort of just stayed relevant inside of their company, I guess is the best way to say that. And so I got the idea at the Bigger Pockets conference last year. So they just had the 2022 conference, but in 2021, I remember going there and thinking, what have they not published? Like, it almost just feels all done, like there's nothing that could ever come out new again.
Yeah.
But it dawned on me, I was like, medium term, I wonder if anybody would even read that. Like, maybe it's just a little too niche, because a year ago it wasn't that popular. And then it freaking took hold. It's like on fire right now. So I just think that's a stroke of luck, but maybe it's also just being in the industry for so long and seeing things coming down the pipe. It's like, I feel like I understand what's happening next a little bit better than some people.
Yeah, I definitely think 2023 is the year of the midterm rentals. And definitely COVID had a huge part to play in my own experience from pivoting into midterm. But I also think something that's more common now is the city or state regulations that are being enforced on short-term rentals. So what do you anticipate for 2023? Are you concerned about an influx of hosts who are going to be converting into midterm rentals from their short-term rentals?
Yeah, that probably will happen, but I'm not concerned about it. I feel like we all offer something unique, and it's just really that the demand is so high. And I think it's still continuing to be high, and more people are actually learning about Furnish Finder, and so they're starting to use it more. Even Airbnb is seeing that, and they're really pivoting their platform to be able to accommodate these longer stays. And so, when I see these bigger companies doing those moves, I'm like, there's definitely something. They're seeing all that data, and they know they need to be changing things.
Absolutely. And then, so tell me about your co-author, Sarah Weaver. How did you find her? Why did you guys end up writing a book together?
I don't even know how to tell you why. That was just it all just kind of came together. But I met Sarah last year. It was probably still in quarantine times a little bit. She reached out to me to interview me for a virtual summit that she was putting on. She was working for someone who puts those on. And so she was kind of like collecting guests, and we just hit it off. We're both travelers and into real estate, and she's got a very bubbly, like extroverted personality. And so we hit it off there. And a couple months later, I was inviting her out to conferences, and we went to FinCon together. And then after, we went to the Bigger Pockets conference. And so as I was there kind of like brainstorming this thing, she was my roommate. So it was very much like, do you want to do this with me? And Sarah has ghost written a book. So I think what happened for me is that I had tried to write a book maybe like twice. And so I have all these drafts, sitting around that never went anywhere. Yeah. And the fact that she had done it made me feel like, okay, she knows how. Like, we can do this actually. And so I'm so grateful to have had her, because it just made me stick to the project.
Oh my gosh, I feel you, the accountability piece of it, and just making sure that the parts that you're writing are cohesive together, having someone to bounce that off of. You talked about just now her being your roommate, and a lot of people will assume that once you have 12 rental properties, you're traveling the world, you're doing all these things, surely you're staying at 5-star hotel, penthouse suite. And so expand more, because you even talk about, your pet sitting experiences, and your mindset seems to be always on that of being frugal still. It's just a mindset of yours. And so tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think it does change a little bit. Like, lifestyle creep is real for sure. And so there's things in my life where I'm like, I don't ever want to think about going out to a restaurant. I just want to go and have fun with my friends and order whatever I want, because I remember the times of like picking the cheapest thing and like not getting a drink or whatever just to make it work. And so I feel like, oh, I've come a long way. I have a nice-ish car and I have nice homes and nice furniture. So there's things that matter to me, but I still get all of my clothing from clothing swaps. And I still do a lot of travel through pet sitting. So there's ways to find hacks that work for you in the areas that you don't need to spend money. Right. So I think that's different for everyone, but it's great to have that because it does save you a lot and you can go out and buy another house.
Yeah,
that's where I want to put my money.
The next investment. Yeah. So for the viewers who have not heard about this pet sitting travel strategy, how does that work? What is that like?
Yeah. So I use an app. I used to do pet sitting way back when I needed to just be out of my apartment. So the whole thing about Airbnb and hacking your home is like, if you're in your home, you're paying for it. Right. So I tried to be out as much as I could. And so that started with just word of mouth pet sitting. And the thing that kind of sucks about that is you never really know what you're going to be walking into. It's like, maybe the house is not that nice. And so now when there's apps out there, you can like look at their whole profile, see their house, see the pets. And I now just pick like luxury homes. So I'm only going to get out of my house if it's nicer than my house.
Yeah.
So, places that would be like $1,000 a night on an Airbnb, I'm like, hell yeah, I'll go there for free and watch your pet and then rent out my house for $300 a night. So win, win, win.
And also, I can only assume this is true in my life, that you have built your life around having flexibility with your schedule. And if that is true, then you have more flexibility to accommodate these house sitting needs to go travel on those dates, meanwhile, opening up those opportunities to rent your own house.
Yeah. So our rule in Boulder where we live is that you have to be in your home 6 months of the year at least. And so we ride that line really close, and we're not like being super intentional about like, oh my gosh, we have to be out 6 months, but we take the opportunity to go be in Hawaii for 2 months. And we use pet sitting a lot here in Colorado for our snowboard pass so that we can go stay in all the like really nice snow towns, ski towns. So it's such a great tool and you can use it all over the world. So if people are interested, definitely reach out. I'm happy to help you.
Yes. And I'll get your contact and I'll include that for them as well.
Cool.
I'm definitely going to try this. I've not tried this before, so I will also report back to see if this is a legit way of traveling.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's move on to some parts of the book. So now that you're a real estate agent licensed, can you tell me, first of all, why you chose to go into that coming from an investor background? And then also what type of clients would be good for you, or what areas are you servicing?
Yeah. So a couple of reasons. At first I was buying out of state so much that I was like, yeah, it probably doesn't really matter. But I bought like 3 places in Colorado that I could have got that sweet discount. And I'm like, that was stupid. So I feel like if you are buying more than one house a year, you should probably have your license. And it is kind of annoying to keep up with the extra credits and things that you have to do to maintain a license, but I love it. And the other thing that happened is that in a very short period of time, 3 different transactions happened that I could have gotten a referral for. And I was like, okay, the universe is showing me this. It was like a friend of mine, my neighbor, and then my partner was buying. And I was like, what am I doing? So it was great. And it also got spurred from COVID. So there was a time during COVID that I was really worried about short-term rentals and like, what's going to happen next? And so I was, quarantining, watching Selling Sunset. And I was like, I want to be a cunty realtor too. That's what I want.
Yes. And it looks so fabulous, but you're still doing the hacking travel strategies, right?
It's true. I'm not quite as fancy as they are, but I'm working on it.
I recently was told by my real estate agent that if I were to get a license just in giving referrals, it'd be so much easier to get that kickback. And, in real estate, if you have other aligning businesses that kind of move you in the direction, even if you're going to be on the investing side, it still helps. So I think that's a great point that you made there.
It's true. I mean, so I love Colorado, but our market is expensive and it doesn't work for everybody. And the numbers
Yeah.
don't always cash flow. They don't pencil out right. So I send a lot of people out of state. And because of being a licensed agent, you can do those referrals all over the US. So it's fun for me to not feel like, oh, well, the only way I'm going to get paid is I have to try to sell somebody on something I don't think that will work for them. I'm all
Right.
about, okay, I'm going to learn the great markets, plug into the great teams, and like build stuff together. And so I really feel like I can help almost anyone. It's awesome.
With your experience with short-term rentals and midterm rentals, does that extend into your relationship with your real estate clients?
Yeah, totally. So those are the businesses I really believe in. Like those are the strategies I use the most and understand the most. And so I'm working on clients in those areas because of tax benefits and just the longevity. I think there's a lot of demand in those spaces. And so it's hard for me to say like, I believe you should get a long-term rental. It's just
Right.
very few markets where that actually still works for people. And so I'm just showing them what I know.
Yeah, especially if you're thinking about cash flow for living today. Long-term rentals have been proven over time, but it's a long-term strategy, whereas the midterm and the short term is where you're able to achieve that as well as get money to live on right now.
Yeah.
So for new investors, first of all, I have to say this book, I found it surprisingly robust. I was expecting for a title like 30-Day Stay to be a little too niche. And I would discourage viewers from hesitating on getting the book because I was very surprised about how much detailed information that you gave on not just midterm rentals, but real estate investing as a whole. And when you look at it in comparison with short-term and long-term. So in the book, you go over a strategy that you use a combination of strategies to acquire properties. From, the way that you finance it to using the BRRRR strategy. For newbies who feel a little too intimidated to put such a robust deal type together, how would you recommend that they make their entry into furnished rentals and specifically midterm rentals?
Well, what I love about this like midterm MTR space is that you can still find deals right on the MLS. Like most of the deals in my history, I've only bought one off market. So people think like, oh, the only way I'm going to get a deal is I have to do this crazy stuff and like cold call and send mailers and knock on doors. And you don't have to. So what's great is that there's a lot of markets where you can just literally go on the MLS. So I think what's important is having a good investor friendly agent who can kind of direct you on the right like niche of area and like just the fine tuning points. So I always say you need to have somebody who's either owning or operating in whatever field you're looking to do. So, is that flipping? Is it short-term rental? Is it medium-term rental? Like you need to actually talk to somebody doing it. There's a lot of agents out there that can really help somebody get their first time home that they'll live in for 10 years, but a lot of those agents don't own property. So it's a really different kind of agent and you need to be like intentional about that.
When working with agents, I talk to my viewers a lot about what they should expect to get out of their agent or how their agent can best represent them. But you being an agent yourself, like what if you were working with an investor, and sometimes investors, especially the newer ones, go in having a lot of expectations of their agents that aren't realistic because they're looking for the best deal. And when you're shopping off of the MLS, it's a different approach. So what would you say would be some of your findings about working with investors that they should keep in mind to better their relationship with their agent in the process of finding an investment property?
Yeah, a few things. So I think it's important to be really clear about what you want. And not to expect, so most agents will just work off of what's on the MLS. A couple of investor types can find things off the MLS, but that shouldn't really be your expectation.
Right.
But if you're very clear, they can tell you, hey, this has just come out. This is going to be a really good one for what you're looking for. And you need to be able to act fast. So have all your ducks in a row, whether that's your lending and pre-approval. And then you also have to move forward. So if they're bringing you properties and you're just kind of avoiding them or ghosting them, that is the biggest annoying thing, is that people just ghost you when they're not sure, they're taking a break. You have to have a good line of communication because they're out there like hustling. If they're bringing you stuff and you're just ignoring them, they're going to stop bringing you stuff. So be ready to actually take action if the right thing fits your buy box and it makes the numbers work.
Right. And also if you're wanting a long-term relationship, because hopefully these investors aren't getting just one deal. So if they're looking to build a relationship, that dependability goes both ways.
That's my favorite thing, actually, is that I was consulting people a lot before I became an agent. And because it's kind of an expensive thing, I would talk to somebody once or twice, and then I wouldn't really know what happened, and you might follow up with emails, but you just don't really know. Now I have people that have bought like 5 homes with me, and we're planning out, what's happening over the next 6 months. What's your portfolio? Like, where are we going? And so it's just cool to have that relationship and like actually see them evolving. Yeah. So it's really rewarding that way.
Love it. One of the things that I love the most about the book, that I love Audible, but I might recommend viewers who like to see numbers to get the actual physical book, because there are so many case studies inside and there's so many different scenarios that even I sometimes forget to think about. One of the ones that stood out to me, it was so simple, but it was this couple who had restructured their short-term rental furnishings to accommodate families because they learned that the target group that was coming into the home should have been families. And so they added bunk beds and a playroom. So for those who are more familiar with short-term rental, but they are thinking about pivoting to midterm rentals, how do you see that being different? And how do you see furnishing this space differently?
So it depends on who you're targeting. So there's kind of these 2 direct groups in the midterm space. You've got the easy kind of grab people that you find on Airbnb and Furnish Finder, and those are nurses and digital nomads, people renovating a home for a little period of time, students. So in those, I always think it's good to have a desk because there's a lot of people working from home. And then blackout curtains, because a lot of nurses work overnight, so they need to sleep during the day. Those are the very important pieces. If you're going after contracts, so that's like the second type, those are ones where it ends up being a lot more families. And so you could focus on family decor if you wanted to. And that's if you have the bigger homes like 3-2 and 4 and beyond. So it really depends, what's the asset that I have and who am I best serving? You kind of need to make your strategy that way.
Tell us a little bit more about what you mean by going after contracts. What does that look like?
Yeah, so that's a little bit more labor intensive on the forefront, but it makes so much money. So an easy rule of thumb is we say like long-term is market rate, midterm you could do 1.5 times, short term's like 2 times market rate. But actually you can beat short term if you're doing midterm with contracts. And so direct contracts come from government contracts. They could be construction companies bringing, engineers in. It can be insurance contracts where people are out of their home for a period of time. They pay so much more, but you have to go out, cold call, network with these companies. And some people don't want to make that effort. And you quite frankly don't need to because there's so much demand. But you are leaving money on the table. So if people are like, hey, I'm willing to do that or train a VA to do that, you can build relationships and then you can have less properties and make so much money. Yeah. So it all depends.
Yes. Agreed. I was working on listing one of my midterm rentals onto an insurance company site. But, unlike the bigger platforms like the Furnish Finder and Airbnb, where people are flocking to you, now I'm spending time creating these one-off listings over and over again. Yeah. And it is a lot of work up front, but you're saying it could be worth it. And that could be a good way to go.
Yeah, there's a guy, Jassy Vasquez. I don't know why I always have trouble with his name, but he is a YouTuber as well. And he has a course where he teaches people how to do this specifically. Right. And so I'm in partnership with him doing a couple projects, but we may even just take his course, like have my assistant do it because there's so much intricacy and if you're not doing it in a directed way, you can feel like you're just like, it's a black hole. You're just like putting stuff out there. And is anything really sticking? Right.
Yeah.
So, but he now gets 70% of his bookings through contracts. And so he's making incredible money on these properties. And
Right.
some of them are in rural, nowhere, California. So that's kind of amazing.
Yeah, very good. Okay, so one of the things that I love most about the book is that there's tons of tips that are sprinkled all the way through the book. But a couple that stand out for me the most is because I have a couple homes in out-of-state properties, right? So you think that people should go and just take an Uber straight to like rent a U-Haul cargo van so that they can drive that cargo van around to furnish the units. And I thought that is so genius. Why would you rent a separate rental car when you're going to be doing all of these like Facebook Marketplace pickups anyway, right?
Yeah, U-Hauls are key.
U-Hauls are key. And the other part that I was thinking was so smart too is that when you buy out of state or even out of the area, you don't know the seasonality of the utilities in those areas. And you suggested in the book to call the utility companies and figure out the seasonality to fact check what your expenses are going to be on average through the whole year. So I thought that was super genius. I think the book, even someone who is on a little bit more seasoned side as me, found so many benefits. Can you tell us who this book is targeted towards? Who would benefit from reading it the most?
Yeah, so I would say anyone who wants a furnished rental, whether it's a medium term or short term, there's a lot of tips that apply to both.
Right.
And what we really wanted to do is make it actionable. And so there's a lot of books out there that are very conceptual, and it's kind of like, okay, I'm learning an idea, but like, how do I really do it? And so we really wanted someone to like pick up the book that never did real estate and then buy something at the end of it. So we're hoping that someone will just go and take action with it. So that's really who it's for. It's kind of a broad category, but I'm hoping that I'm going to start hearing all these stories and people are doing it. Yeah, I'm really excited.
Yeah, me too. I love it. I was reading it actually on the plane on the way back from my trip to Oahu. And
nice.
My husband was sitting next to me and he was sleeping, but I found myself multiple times thinking I wanted to elbow him and like, look, like this is so smart. And I've been doing it since 2016. So there's always so much more to learn. I really appreciate you writing the book, and Sarah too, and appreciate your time today.
Thank you for having me on. This was really fun.
All right. So that's it.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I think like this was actually a really different episode than what I'm getting asked out there. And so that I really applaud that, because sometimes I'm like, oh man, I'm doing so many podcasts. And then like, what would make someone want to listen to this episode over that episode when they're the same questions, but yours were really unique. So I love that.
It was great talking to you. Good success on the book.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Wasn't that amazing? I'm so excited for you to get your hands on this book, but I was really excited to get to talk to Zeona. She was amazing. I'm going to link for you down below the Audibles, all of her contact information and social media. If you need anything else, just leave it in the comments and I will see you next week.